Okay, so for today's class, couple things. You might want all the supplies today. We'll be doing nothing really challenging, but props are helpful. So again, they're a nice to have, not a need to have, but I've got some blankets, some folded blankets with me, and then a yoga strap, and then some blocks, mostly working on shoulder opening today. So I love shoulder opening for a couple of reasons. One, I work at a desk a lot. And just even if you don't work at a desk a lot, just we tend to as humans kind of do this type of thing. So the shoulder opening class, this will feel so nice after, I promise you. And also, apologies in advance for the funky hair. But again, with the shoulder opening, we'll sometimes have our arms like all over, all around. And so this is the hair situation that works best for me, but not to do like a spoiler alert or anything, but at the end, even this is not gonna be sufficient. So lots of fun, different shapes we'll make today. So take a sec to gather whatever you need, and then in your own time, find your centering posture. So for this sequence today, I've got a preset sequence. It does say Balasana, child's pose, but you're welcome, of course, to do Sukhasana, easy pose, which is cross-legged, or I like Virasana, hero pose. I also love Balasana, child's pose. Whatever pose you feel comfortable in. So this isn't really meant to be like a stretch or anything like that. It's meant to be a comfortable position. So taking a moment, getting all settled in, and allow yourself to exhale. You're where you need to be, you're on time. This is your time just for you. And as you're here, taking a few moments to feel centered. Well, what does that mean? It just means becoming present in this moment. We often are rushing around in our lives, thinking about the past, thinking about the future, what we need to do. So this is one of those rare moments, and we're working towards them being less and less rare, where we feel grounded, feel present, enjoying this moment, whether you're actually comfortable or whether you are knowing that you are working on self-improvement. There's comfort in that. And to bring yourself to the present moment, there's a few little tricks, including feel the mat beneath you, where it makes contact with you. Feel those spaces. Feel the temperature of the air on your skin. Does the room feel warm? Does it feel cool? Just noticing, not reacting. Are there some sounds around you? This one's my favorite and probably the most helpful in the real world off the mat. If there is perhaps some construction work being done outside, or there's people talking in a different room, all those things we tend to feel irritated, and I just want some peace and quiet. But when you can learn to tune those out or let them be white noise, things exist around you, and we notice them without reacting. Almost using them to help you become present, become content. And then we'll start moving here a little bit. So let's head up and back to a downward facing dog. Take your time, take your time. So if you're in Balasana, we'll come up to hands and knees. And then taking your time, tuck the toes under, hips press up and back to Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. I'm just taking a few moments here. Maybe walking it out a little bit. I often will use downward facing dog as a bit of a baseline for how I'm feeling physically. If I've been doing a lot of yoga, my downward dog will feel much more open. If I've been working at a desk a lot or running around a lot, not doing so much fitness or stretching or yoga, it'll feel a little bit tighter. No judgment, just noticing. And if you are feeling a bit tighter, notice, okay, well, I'll take it a little gentle today. No problem. And then gently scoop the belly in, lowering through hands and knees. And then we'll come all the way to seated, cross-legged. I'm working on a little bit of opening for our shoulders. So lifting up nice and tall. Let's lean over onto the left hand. I'll mirror you. So left hand, right arm reaches up and over to the side. So a nice side bend. And then feel that stretch along the side body. So it's okay to banana, right? In some of our poses, we want to be straight. This one, we want to actually open up through the ribs and feel a little bit of a stretch in the shoulder, maybe opening up the heart towards the sky. So full side body stretch. And then scoop the belly in and floating up and over to the other side. So again, it's okay to banana a little bit here. And then opening, rotating the heart open towards the sky. Scooping the belly in, floating all the way up. First side, but this time we'll extend the arm out to the side and then reach it back and up, all the way over and around. So we'll do a few circles, just at your own pace. Maybe about a minute here. We'll just do a few circles as our class today is focused around the shoulders. So we want them to be nice and warm and a little bit open. That's already about 3 circles-ish. Don't worry too much. Just nice big circles. And let's say wherever you're at, we'll do one more. And then scoop the belly in, floating up and over other side, extending the arm. And beginning your circles, heading back, up, all the way over, and around. At your own pace, we'll just do maybe 4 or 5 circles, nice and big. Mine always feel like octagons the first couple, and then they sort of cooperate a little better on like round 3-ish. And then the last couple, trying to smooth it out. I know for me there's some like sticky spots. so it's I go a little bit slower where it feels like it's a bit more of a stretch. And then wherever you're at, we'll do one more. And then scoop the belly in, floating all the way up. And then let's head up and back to downward dog once again. So through hands and knees, scooping the belly in. Tuck the toes under, hips press up and back to that big V or the upside down V. Feeling a nice stretch. Maybe some organic movements here, maybe walking it out a little bit. I like shifting my hips from side to side. That feels like a fairly big stretch. And then let's step the feet forward all the way to the top of your mat, landing in a forward fold. Let the head hang. And decompressing the spine. So feel that space between each vertebra. And then slowly, one vertebra at a time, ragdoll all the way up to standing. And then we'll do a few modified sun salutations. So this is a vinyasa free class, so no vinyasa in this class, but we still do some flowing movement here. So let's bring the feet all the way together, starting up at the top of your mat. And we're in Tadasana mountain pose. So belly scoops in, fingertips reaching towards the floor, feeling wide across the collarbones without arching through the back. So ribs are soft. And then on an inhale, let's raise the arms up, reaching up high, and doing a few organic movements here. So I like to interlace my fingers. This isn't an actual pose or anything, but then I like to straighten through the arms. And it feels like a good stretch for the shoulders here. And then we'll head into proper Urdhva Hastasana, which is palms together, which is actually a little bit harder. Maybe looking up at the thumbs. And on the exhale, forward fold. So nice and smooth forward fold. All the way down, feeling that nice length through the backs of the legs. Taking a few moments here, a couple deep breaths. On your next inhale, looking up to the horizon for Ardha Uttanasana. Flat back pose, just feeling, again, a nice stretch through the backs of the legs. And forward fold. On an inhale, come on all the way up, reaching up high, getting taller. And return to Tadasana mountain pose. So it's kind of like a sun salutation A where we just skipped a whole bunch of steps. So that's our modified sun salutations. I like doing those when I just have a very specific area I like to stretch. So for the backs of the legs, we'll head into that number 2. On an inhale, raise the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale for flat back. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale all the way up, reaching up high. And exhale to a tall mountain. And if you feel lightheaded, one palm to the forehead. So it's a lot of ups and downs. If you're one who is prone to feeling a little bit faint, that palm to the forehead really works for me. One more. On an inhale, arms go up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale to lengthen. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale all the way up, reaching up high. And exhale to a tall mountain. So there were our 3 modified sun salutations. Heading into our first standing posture, which is called Parasarita Padottanasana C, we'll step the feet apart, about 1 leg's length apart. So feet are parallel. It's not like a super duper wide stance unless you have super duper long legs. And we want the feet parallel. So there's a tendency for the toes to tip out a bit. We want them parallel like skis. And then interlace the fingers behind the back, straightening through the arms. On an inhale, I'm just going to step back on my mat to be sure that I can be seen here. On an inhale, lifting through the heart. On the exhale, forward fold. So just like we did in our modified sun salutations, but allow the arms to come up and overhead. So we want to try to bring the arms away from the back. And at first, especially if your shoulders are pretty tight, they won't want to, and that's okay. You might not be able to straighten through the arms. That's okay too. Feeling a bit of a stretch. In those first few centimeters or inches, while we're trying to reach the arms away from the back, it almost feels more like a strength posture than a stretch posture, and that's okay. We're trying to feel some openness in the shoulders. Couple deep breaths for 1. And 2. On an inhale, come on all the way up to standing. Release the arms if you feel lightheaded, 1 palm to the forehead. and release. We'll return to Tadasana mountain pose. Most of our poses today are seated, so we have that one standing posture, and now we need to get towards the floor. We'll do so safely, so we'll do like a half vinyasa, not a real one, because I promised some non-vinyasa classes. On an inhale, arms go up. On an exhale, forward fold. On an inhale for flat back. On an exhale, bend the knees, plant the hands, and we'll step back to downward facing dog. So we skip that hard bit with the chaturanga. We'll save those for another day. From here, gently lower through hands and knees, and then we'll lower all the way onto our bellies. So from here, we'll work on Bhujangasana Cobra pose, which is a bit of a shoulder strengthener. So it's a back bend, shoulder strengthener, and we'll place the hands near the chest, not too narrow. So we want them just slightly wider than shoulders width apart. You'll notice they can't be directly beneath the shoulders because then your thumbs will be beneath your chest, and that's not quite right. So slightly wider than shoulders width apart, shoulders down and back, and then lifting or peeling the chest off the floor, using the back body strength. There's a couple different ways you can practice this one. One is like no hands, right? It's good for a strengthening exercise. But so I usually start with that. I usually do that. That's not traditional Bhujangasana. Traditional Bhujangasana, we actually place a little bit of weight into the hands. And as long as you're injury-free and your spine is nice and healthy, super okay to feel that nice stretch. So you start pressing down into the hands, and then eventually the arms are straight. Maybe that's not today. And then just feel that nice stretch, and even lifting the chin a little bit so that we have a nice even arch throughout the spine. The shoulders are down, and there's a tendency for the low back to take most of the back bend, which it will. I mean, it is more flexible, and other reasons that we'll go into detail in another video, but or another class. But we'll try to create as much of an even bend as possible. So what does that mean? Well, let's lift through the heart while we're here, and I almost like to think of the heart melting forward. And it's almost like the shoulders are moving up and over the mid-back. Couple deep breaths. And if you're like, I can hardly breathe in this, that's normal because the diaphragm is a bit compressed here. And I suppose that's long enough. Let's slowly, slowly release. What I love to do in Bhujangasana is every single time we release from Bhujangasana, don't just flop down, but try to use the back muscles, almost like the back body is like, no, I want to stay here forever. And then it kind of, you know what I mean? Like it kind of uses the back strength, and we lower slowly. Love, love, love that feeling. And it gains you strength every time we practice it. From here, let's press up and back to child's pose. So belly scoops in, push the floor away, and head up and back to that child's pose, just to feel that nice length through the spine after our back bend. And then scoop the belly in, coming forward and returning to our bellies once again. The next pose we'll prepare for is either repeat Bhujangasana, or if you want to up the ante a little bit, we'll head into Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, which is upward facing dog. So the only difference here between the two is, so Bhujangasana is the whole pelvis is on the floor. Upward dog, the only things that are on the floor, parts of us that are on the floor are the hands and the shoelaces part of the foot. So I actually think of it as the ankles. So the ankles are on the floor and the hands are on the floor, but everything else is the same. We're lifting up through the heart, lifting the chin a bit, but the only difference, so to come down, you bend the elbows, is that the pelvis is on the floor for Bhujangasana, but not for upward dog. So let's try that again. Either repeat Bhujangasana, cobra pose, or upward facing dog. So we go through cobra first, peeling the chest off the floor, a little bit of pressure into the hands, and then straightening through the arms, and then lifting up through the heart. Equal weight on each hand. Legs are super straight. And then lowering all the way down. And once again, child's pose. So pushing up and back to Balasana, child's pose. And that one is actually a trickier pose than it looks like. Like, it is technically in beginner yoga, but it's not really a beginner pose. And then scoop the belly in, coming up through hands and knees. And then we'll move on to Anahatasana, heart chakra pose. So this one is a nice one. It's not very challenging, which is also nice. So from hands and knees, I like to have my self situated at the back half of my mat. And then we walk the hands forward, but keep the hips where they are. So keep the hips where they are in space. Walk the hands forward, and then we lower the forehead towards the floor. Or if that doesn't reach, we place the forehead on a block. And what we're actually trying to do is feel a bit of a stretch, maybe in the back, but maybe in the shoulders. And if you are quite flexible, what we'll do next is, provided you have a healthy spine, including the neck, it's the chin that reaches the floor, and then eventually the chest reaches the floor. To come out, scoop the belly in, nice and gentle, walk the hands back, and release. I like to release to thunderbolt pose, which is just sitting on the heels. So for Anahatasana, heart chakra pose, that one, if it didn't feel awkward, maybe you weren't doing it right. It's not the most comfortable. It's nice, it's nice, but we do want to feel that length and stretch within the shoulders. I feel a bit of a stretch in through the shoulders here. Our next one is dolphin pose, which requires that shoulder mobility again. So Shishulasana, we come to our forearms and they're parallel, palms facing down onto the floor. So there's a tendency for the hands to move inward. We want them to stay out, and not just the hands. I sometimes see people like their wrists move inward and they're like, no, but my fingers are pointing out. And that's not what we're looking for. So I like to think of the wrists as moving out. And we want the elbows beneath the shoulders. So the elbows tend to want to splay outward. Don't let them parallel like a box shape here. Then we tuck the toes under. Speaking of awkward, here we go. Lift the hips up and then press the heart towards the feet. Eventually we want the shoulders right above the elbows. So if your shoulders are back towards your feet, that means you've probably got quite a bit of shoulder mobility or some shoulder mobility. So you want to step the toes in a little bit. And then once again, press back, heart towards the feet, and hold. The gaze is between the arms on the floor. And this one, if it doesn't feel awkward, you're definitely not doing this one right. This one is a great strengthener. And then to come out, if you've walked the toes in, you can step them back out. Belly scoops in, knees gently lower, and we take rest, child's pose. For a few deep breaths. That one is so good for posture. So if we do that one quite often, you'll stand up taller, look more confident. I love that posture. I like to work on that posture. Okay, so come on up and back to, let's take Dandasana, staff pose. So I like to go through cross-legged and then bring the feet forward. And this one's a nice one. So you might need a strap for this one depending on shoulder mobility, but it's Marichiasana A. So for this one, we'll keep the left leg straight and then we'll bend through the right knee, bringing the foot in towards the hip. From here, we'll lean over onto the left hand and then reach the right arm forward on the inside of your bent knee. And then we reach forward as much as is available, as far as you can. Thumb turns down, and then we wrap around the bent leg. So from here, we open up the left shoulder and then try to find the hands behind you. So this is where a strap comes in. If you're not able to find the hands, I never did use a strap. I always clasped onto my shirt or pant leg. I just found it easier. And then if you have the bind, inhale to lengthen, exhale, reaching forward. So this is a forward fold, but keeping the spine long. This should feel amazing on the shoulder. You can't really see with this camera angle what the hands are doing, but you'll see on the other side. Slowly, slowly come on up and release the arms. Returning to Dandasana staff pose. So now my right shoulder feels looser than my left. We'll repeat on the other side. So bend through the left knee. Keep that right leg extended. Leaning now over onto the right arm. The left arm reaches forward, forward, forward. And then the thumb turns down and we wrap around the leg here. So the goal, usually when we start, our hand is kind of down onto the floor, or we can't move past the knees, or like it doesn't bend backwards. So the trick is you have to have the elbow past the knee. If not, you just keep reaching forward. Once your elbow is past the knee, it's a lot of internal rotation. So you're like, but my elbow bends this way. We actually need it to go this way, okay? So we want that internal rotation here. And then the higher up the hand is, the easier the bind will be. So those are my tricks for you. That's pretty much all I got though. And then if you're still like, well, they don't reach, mine don't either because I have little T-Rex arms. So the trick here is open up through the right shoulder. So it's almost like you're doing a little bit of a twist. Reach the hands behind, and then you can maybe find the clasp here. Then inhale, lengthening, exhale, reaching forward, forward, forward. And then slowly come on up and release to Dandasana staff pose. From here, let's head into Gomukhasana, cow face pose, but I do like to break this one down into a couple of steps because first of all, it's easier to learn it that way. But for me, my shoulders are not very open, so I really require this extra step. Even though I've been doing yoga for 100 years, it's still I'm working on stuff. So for this one, starting with cross-legged, so we won't add the legs just yet, unless you know it and love it and want to hop in, that's fine too. Right arm goes up and heading back. Take the left hand and gently guide the elbow back. So you can see I'm arching my back, that's cheating. It's okay. But the reason I'm cheating is because my shoulder isn't open enough to just be here. So what I'm trying to do eventually is get the elbow all the way behind the head, but I'm not pulling on it with my left hand. My left hand is just guiding. So if there's any resistance, you gotta stop. And then eventually you want the fingertips reaching down the back, and then you can start lifting the chin. And if you don't feel a stretch here, I guess just keep going. But I feel a very, very lovely stretch here. So again, I got the right fingertips reaching down the back. Couple deep breaths here. It is kind of amazing how just a few moments open up things quite a little bit. Remember to breathe. I think I'm telling myself that more than you. And then slowly, slowly release. My shoulders need a second. If you want to go ahead and hop into that left side, feel free. I'll join you in 3, 2, 1. Left side. Left arm goes up, heading back, and right hand is guiding that left elbow towards, so it may not be anywhere near, towards behind the head, fingertips reaching down the back. And then trying to not arch through the back, but lifting through the chin. Couple deep breaths, feeling that stretch. And then slowly, slowly, slowly release. And then we'll add the legs and then do the full arms. So that's how I like to break up this pose a little bit to make it slightly more accessible if you've got tight shoulders. So for the legs, we come up through hands and knees. You might want to block for this unless your hips are very open. So what we do is keep the right leg where it is. Left leg reaches all the way back, so behind the right knee. And then I like to kind of shimmy the knees all the way together. Step the feet apart, so opposite edges of the mat, and then gently, slowly, carefully keep all the weight on the hands. You don't want to fall into this one, for sure, for sure, for sure. Your knees will not be happy with you. So this is where you want to sit up on a block, or maybe a couple folded blankets, something like that. Now for this one, I like to hold the legs longer than I hold the arms, so I actually get myself situated here, and I spend about 30 seconds here. So again, I make this a two-parter. And then we add the arms and hang out there for 5 deep breaths, or maybe a little bit longer. But I like to get that feeling of, okay, my hips are no longer going, what are you doing? You know that moment. Or is it just me? Are my hips the only ones that talk to me like that? It's usually about 20 seconds or so. And then my hips are like, okay, she's in here on purpose for some reason. And then we add the arms. So this pose, it's the same arm as the leg on top, okay? So fun fact, this is a controversial topic in the yoga world, but through all of my research, I've concluded I'm pretty sure this is the way it goes. So I'll maybe I'll explain that in another class at some point because it's kind of interesting. But if my right leg is on top, my right arm is up, and then the left arm reaches back. And you try to find your fingertips behind you. I'll give you a hint though. But before that, drawing the shoulders back. So especially the bottom arm shoulder, that will create a healthy alignment within the arms in the sockets. But one of the hints is that this is not the actual pose. The arms are the full expression of this pose, but the legs are a modification. The actual pose, the legs are different. And so on that basis is why I think that the arms are the way they are. The full version of the legs in this pose, it's very difficult to do opposite arms. And then slowly, slowly release. That's all I can hold that for. Oy. So again, the yoga strap is something that you might like for this pose. I don't, again, I like to just hold on to my shirt or whatever I have back there. Let's switch sides with the legs now. Belly scoops in, moving forward through hands and knees. Unravel the legs, squaring everything up. And then other side. So right goes all the way behind left this time. Shimmy the knees together, step the feet apart, and then heading back. And one knee goes on top of the other. I wait about 20 seconds for things to feel not so tight. Couple deep breaths to help that process along. And then here we go with the arms. So right arm goes up, heading back. The other arm goes back, heading up. So left arm up, right arm back. And then if you're right hand dominant, this will probably be the more complicated side. And then drawing the shoulders back. Couple deep breaths. And then slowly, slowly, slowly release. It feels so much nicer after though. Doesn't that feel nice and open? I love the feeling of after the yoga for that pose. Let's come on out. So scoop the belly in, we lean forward, unravel the legs. Let's take a downward facing dog just to kind of reset. There's a couple postures in yoga that I use to just reset. That's the best word I think for it. It elongates the spine, feels that stretch in the backs of the legs. We also reverse blood flow towards the head, so that makes us feel more alert. And then scoop the belly in, gently lowering through hands and knees. And then let's come all the way to seated, and then we get to lay all the way back. So there are a couple of interesting postures coming up, and we start with a couple of really, really nice ones. They're all really nice though. I like all of them coming up in this particular sequence. So let's lay all the way back, and we'll start with a spinal twist. So laying back, let's bend the knees, feet on the floor to start, arms out in a T position, palms facing down. From here, we pick the feet up off the floor. So you're kind of like in Apanasana with the legs, which is that knees to chest pose. Then we keep the shoulders on the floor and then slowly lower the knees to the right as we look to the left. This can be a dynamic posture. It can also be like a relaxed posture. We're going to do the dynamic variation. So we just arrived. We'll scoop the belly in. Press the low back into the floor so that we're all squared up. And other side, keep the shoulders on the floor as the knees move over to the left, slowly using your core as we look to the right. Once the knees hit the floor, and by hit the floor, I mean gently, softly make contact with the floor. It's all in the way we word things. Scoop the belly in, press the low back into the floor as we square everything up. One more round. Knees with a little resistance like we're moving through water, move over to the right as we look over to the left. Both shoulders firmly on the floor. Belly scoops in as we press the low back into the floor, floating the knees up through center. We pass center and they drift over to the left like we're gliding through water as we look to the right. Shoulders on the floor. Last time we'll scoop the belly in, press the low back into the floor, and then let's hug the knees into our chest for Apanasana, maybe a little rock side to side. And then we'll prepare for Supta Parivartanasana. So that's a one-legged twist pose. If that's too much though, feel free to repeat the Jathara Parivartanasana, which is the two-legged twist, but just hold, okay? So with our arms in a T position, palms facing down, let's do a lift and scooch of the hips to the right. Extend the left leg down, right knee moves up and over to the side. Keep the right shoulder on the floor, and you might want to lower your knee onto a block as we look over to the right. Couple deep breaths. And to come out, we'll scoop the belly in, press the low back into the floor, and Squaring everything up. Let's hug the knees in between sides to just make sure everything's all squared up. Like a reset. This is another one I like to use to reset. So here we go again. Arms into a T position, palms facing down. Feet on the floor, lift and scooch the hips over to the left. And then extend the right leg down. Left knee lifts up and over to the right as we look to the left. Keep the shoulders on the floor. And to come out, we'll scoop the belly in. Press the low back into the floor. Square everything up. And hug those knees in, little rock side to side, Apanasana. Okay, here's where it gets fun. We'll head into Halasana plow pose. I need more space, so I'm gonna move down on my mat. And this one, the feet go up overhead. So if you are not comfortable with this pose, we can simply do the lay down and the feet above head without moving up and over the head. So what we'll do is lay back, and position one is just with the feet up, and we hang out here. This is nice too, it reverses blood flow. So that's nice. If you feel comfortable with this pose, and you want to head into it, keep the head looking up to the ceiling, and then little momentum, so not a lot of momentum. If you don't catch the hips the first time, then you gotta let it go, try again. Okay, so little momentum. Catch the hips, and then allow the feet to move towards the floor. If they don't reach, maybe onto a block or a chair or something, or just hanging. It's best to support them though. And then we hold. So this is one that's safe to hold for a few minutes actually. So what we want to do is feel an even more mild stretch than usual. Lots of tiny little muscles, and we've got ligaments as well. So really super gentle. We're only here about 1 minute today though, don't worry. From here, either just hold, or if you want to go further, we can head into Karnapidasana, which is ear squeezing posture. So it's the same thing, but we bend the knees. And I like to, you can keep your hands on the floor, or eventually they move towards the feet. And then we move back to Halasana. And to come out, you can use your arms as landing gear. So arms on the floor, palms facing down, belly scoops in, and one vertebra at a time, come on out. And often at the end, it just kind of rolls out and we feel like we don't have control. That's fine too. Eventually we do find that control. From here, let's bring the feet to the floor and just hang out in neutral spine for a few moments. So often the spine feels a little just weird after that one. Not bad. It shouldn't feel bad. Just a little strange because we don't very often stretch that portion of our spine. But we should. It's so good for us. But I do like to be spine neutral for a few moments after that one. Then the next posture is Uttana Padasana Prep. So for this one, same thing. If you're like, I don't know that one. I don't know what you're talking about and I don't like it. Then you can just repeat this one where the legs are up. I'm going to gracefully and discreetly move on my mat. How's that for graceful? I used to be a ballet dancer. It is a wonder I don't have more grace than that. So we straighten through the legs, and then you might need to move the hair. I do. And then what we do is we lift the heart up to the sky. So we're doing like a cobra action, but we're just using the strength of our back to lift up, and then a little bit press into the elbows, and then lower the top of the head to the floor. And we hold. So lifting up through the heart, lifting up, lifting up, lifting up. Last few moments. And release. One last time, we'll hug the knees into the chest for Apanasana. And then we'll prepare for Shavasana, final resting pose. So if your back needs a little extra support today, especially after the Halasana plow pose, Karnapitasana ear squeezing pose, you may wish to keep the knees bent with the feet on the floor. Otherwise, extend the legs. Feet are slightly apart, arms along the sides, palms facing up, gently tucking under the shoulder blades and closing the eyes. Softening everything, but especially through the neck, and the shoulders, and all the way down the arms, letting the fingers softly curl, softening through the face, softening around the eyes, and even the muscle between the eyes. Just letting it all go. And starting to come back, wiggle the fingers and the toes. And gently roll your head from side to side. And reaching your arms above head on the floor for a big stretch, feeling totally refreshed. Bending your knees in one at a time. And gently roll over to the right side. Pausing there for just a moment as we come back. And slowly press yourself all the way up to a comfortable cross-legged position. Taking all the time you need to arrive. And when you do, palms facing up on the knees. Inhale, sitting up tall. And exhale, closing the eyes. And taking those final moments to thank yourself for showing up to your practice today and taking care of you. And slowly open the eyes. Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you next time. Have a really good rest of your day. Bye.